Welcome to Sci-Fi Talk on the Fangirl Zone, the podcast where we discuss shows on the Sci-Fi Channel. I'm Steve.
And I'm Shwan, Fangirl S, and today we'll be discussing episode 4 of season 2 of SurrealEstate.
Well, guess what? We do have ratings for this episode.
Yay! Ratings.
Brought in as 0.02 in adults 18 to 49 with 0.129 million viewers. Hopefully it'll start going up again.
That's not bad.
No, not bad at all. Let's get into episode 4. I Put a Spell on You. Luke spars with the homeowner during negotiations as Zoe takes her first sale call. Man, that call was a bear.
Oh my God. Now I just keep thinking back when we were looking, I'm like, were we those people?
Yeah. So we open with a teenage boy on the phone while walking home. It's dark as shit and appropriately spooky for an episode airing days before Halloween.
I love that they did this.
Yeah, naturally he thinks he's safe. He even
just
tries to convince himself.
It was like the perfect, just spooky movie, and it made me feel like we were going to get a whole different feel this time.
Right. Unfortunately, something in the woods grabs him by the ankle, yanking him into the trees beyond. Then we see Susan lounging in her new home, and she's smitten with it. Susan asks the smart home device to call the condescending, unappreciative jerk, a.k.a. Luke. She leaves a voicemail for him, claiming she needs a few more days to decompress.
I love the toodles.
Yes. Meanwhile, Luke shows an abandoned house to a prospective buyer who wants to demolish it and the property behind it for his tennis courts, guest houses, etc. Money is no object. While the man calls his architect, Luke is drawn to the other property. It's a quaint little cabin in the woods. And yes, it was a cabin in the woods. Luke leaves his business card on the doorknob. We see a mysterious someone observing him from inside the house.
I do want to say before we get too far, when he walked over, he looked down and seen something like on the property line.
Right.
And stepped over it. And that was never discussed.
No, it wasn't.
Never brought up. And that was irking me because I'm like, what was that? What's going on?
Yeah.
And on top of that, his client was a douchebag of extreme proportions.
Absolutely he was.
Oh my God. I was like, seriously? This guy is like the worst like rendition of a rich jerk, but then at the same time, it was probably perfect, you know? But
yes.
Still, it's like, oh, I wanted to punch him.
Yeah.
So later on, Luke meets with Zoe and Phil at base camp to establish the next step for their uber rich client. Well, probably more like a financially irresponsible client, which most real estate agents would be like, cha-ching.
Yes.
Phil and Luke poke fun at Zoe because her first client as a real estate agent is a couple known for being looky-loos. They've never purchased a home. It looks like Zoe might have her work cut out for her. Sure enough, Zoe comes up empty while showing Frida and Laura around the new property. She calls Luke to complain, and, well, additionally, she asks him if he's reached out to Susan yet. After all, the real estate bowling event is that night, and Luke assumes he'll see her there, but this is her event. Maybe make a ring-a-ding call.
Yes, you should.
After his chat with Zoe, Luke meets Kay, the woman who resides in the cabin in the woods, because she found his business card. And can I say, when she first walked in, I'm like, are we supposed to have like a Susan dupe?
Yeah.
Because it was feeling that to me.
The way she was coming on to Luke, it was like, there's got to be some red flag. But he's used to having his senses to tell him that there's a red flag, and he's not catching it these days.
True, true.
While they engage in light flirting, August shows Phil his new invention, a device that goes behind your ear. It stimulates the cochlear nerve whenever there's a supernatural presence. It won't fully restore Luke abilities, but will alert him when he's around said supernatural presence. Phil tries it on for size. Unfortunately, he hears a significantly loud feedback noise, causing him to rip it off. Perhaps it's just a prototype? No, because we get a shot of the young lady. Then Luke urges Kay to sell her property. Why? because this buyer will offer her way more money than it's worth. However, Kay refuses to budge. Before she departs, though, she agrees to go out to dinner with Luke. Once she leaves, Augie warns Luke to keep an eye on her. Something is amiss.
But Luke is not listening.
No, he's not.
He's like, I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. Listen to the man.
Yep.
And what happens? Well, later another teen boy becomes a victim of the woods. Zoe is struggling to get Laura and Frida to bite on a house the following day. Next thing we know, Augie clarifies his concern to Luke while showing him the cochlear device. And he tells Luke that there's something supernatural about Kay. And Luke is just brushing Augie off, claiming, you don't have anything to worry about. Would you stop?
Yes.
She's merely a human woman. No, obviously, she's not. Luke, you are hard-headed and you need a slap.
Yes.
But after learning about Luke's date and cracking jokes, Zoe runs into Rita Weiss, and Rita offers Zoe concrete advice regarding customers. And this worries me now, because honestly, I'm going to have this in the back of my head now when I talk to a realtor.
Yes.
Give them what they need, not what they want. Admittedly, the sound advice, despite coming from a competitor, you can take it like, okay, this is good, or you can take it like, oh, she's trying to tank my effort. But,
right.
I mean, it's Rita, so we're never sure quite where she is.
Yeah, what her motivation is.
But she did seem, like, nice and actually polite to Zoe.
Yes, she did.
So, like I said, take it with a grain of salt, baby. But meanwhile, Phil expresses his concerns about the missing teenage boys because he's seeing this and he's like, this seems familiar somehow. Could it be related to Kay? I mean, nobody's putting anything together yet, but something weird is happening.
Yeah.
And speaking of weird, yet another teenage boy follows a young redheaded girl into the woods and poop vanishes. I'm sorry, but you're like, hey, are you okay? Did you need help? And not responding? All right. You're good. Bye.
Yep, exactly.
Keep moving.
Get out of those woods.
Right.
So Zoe implements Rita's advice when she picks up Frida and Laura for another day of showing. However, instead of giving them tours of whatever they want, she drives them to a house they need. That's my girl. She's taking charge. Then Luke arrives at Kay's house for their date. She tells him about the blood moon, which hints at her mystical origins. Sure enough, we glimpse inside her house. There's a crystal bowl filled with blood, lit candles around it, and lo and behold, we see 3 teenage boys hooked up to tubes, transferring their blood to said bowl.
This will turn out great, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And on his way up to the door, Luke had the device on, but then heard something and took it off. I was so mad.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, at this point, I was thinking she was a vampire. Like, she's got to be a vampire, right? It's got to be weird.
Right.
We'll figure it out. But we don't know anything yet. So we get to see Luke and Kay slather on the sickening thick layer of flirtation. And the male server was getting, I don't know, annoyed, whiny. I'm not quite sure. It was weird when Kay doesn't even acknowledge him. But what was weirder was that Luke wasn't noticing that was happening.
Right.
Like, what is happening here? This is weird. So obviously she can put men under her sway, but we don't know to what extent yet. And then we get to see Zoe showing the ideal home to Laura and Frida. She sells the hell out of this house. And even though they wanted to fight, like, oh, but what about, they ended up seizing the opportunity because even though it's like, we can afford a bigger house, but why be house rich and life poor?
Yes.
Have this house. It's got what you want, everything you need, and you can still have tons of fun. I was like, dang, all right. So Zoe managed to sell a property to a pair of looky-loos. Huzzah. Oh, small problem. It was one of Rita's properties.
Yes.
While Luke and Kay grow closer and closer at the restaurant, Zoe leaves them a voicemail revealing that she got the couple to buy a house, and it was Rita's listing. Sorry, hope we're still friends. Yeah. I didn't understand what that meant until they explained it a little later. So I was like, wait, is she not able to do that? I thought it was weird, but
yeah, shouldn't. have.
But later, Augie and Phil dive into the research at the Roman agency. And hey, as it turns out, Kay's an ancient Hungarian witch who must feed on the blood of men and boys during every blood moon, because it recharges and sustains her until the next one. And oh my God, Luke!
And he's just going.
Yeah. Yep. So our pair leave the agency hoping to catch Luke before he becomes one of Kay's latest victims.
Kay invites Luke inside for a nightcap. She gives him some wine, which makes him lose control of his faculties. She leads him upstairs to her blood lair. Finally, Augie and Phil arrive at Kay's house, and they find her sitting in a bathtub while bathing in blood and chanting a Hungarian spell. Luke is among the teenage boys, becoming increasingly weaker as Kay drains him of his blood. Augie appears transfixed by Kay as Phil drums up a solution. Luke weakly urges him to block out the moonlight, which will zap her of her strength. Phil leaps.
I didn't understand that. I didn't understand how Luke knew that, though. Like, is this supposed to be off screen? She said something?
Well, I think he remembered her mentioning the blood moon in an earlier conversation.
Okay.
And must have, once the drugged wine started hitting in, he had to take his last few moments of clarity to figure out what was going on.
But Phil jumping across the room was kind of comical.
Yes, it was. And grabs a curtain. He tosses it over her, but not before delivering a badass line in Hungarian. Kay withers away to a skeleton in seconds. As Augie and Phil rescue Luke and the boys, Phil jokingly tells Luke that Kay is too old for it.
Again, that seemed like, oh, we just cover her up, it's fine. She's stolen all your blood. Like, I didn't feel like she is gone. I don't know. I was nervous.
Yeah.
Again, I watched too much Supernatural. Later, the gang reunites at the bowling alley for Susan's real estate function. Various agencies will compete against each other in a rousing bowling match. Rita calls Zoe over to meet the Listed Sisters, a group of women real estate agents kicking ass and taking names. Feminism. Woo! Zoe increasingly looks like she wants to close her eyes and blip out of there, though. And I was kind of confused because of the way it was playing out.
Yeah.
I almost felt like it was in her head.
Maybe a little bit, because she is kind of ready to get into some more demon stuff. And yeah, it sure seemed like those two ladies that Rita introduced her to were demons at heart.
But yeah, it was a weird moment.
Yes, it was.
Then Zoe, it goes back to the group, and she apologizes to Luke for selling one of Rita's listings, but he's proud of her because she made a sale out of people that they haven't been able to, and she gets half a commission. So that's what I didn't know what the big deal was, but hey, she still gets half commission. It may not be, the whole thing, but it's pretty good.
Yep.
Well, everything's coming up Roman agency until they realize that Susan's not there. They're like, wait a second, what's going on? Because nobody bothered to call her.
That's right.
I'm so mad at all of you. But speaking of Susan, we do see her attempting to leave the house, and she's arguing with the smart home device because it is refusing to unlock the doors. And she's like, this is my event. I have to go. And then it was all creepy, like, but we've bonded. It's like, what? You need to stop right now, house, because you're freaking me out.
Yep. Unlock my doors and let me get the hell out of here.
But no. Is that what is happening? No, we get something creepier. The walls in the hallway start closing in. I don't know. It's like one of my worst nightmares. And we see her like pushing on the wall and screaming something on like Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
And now she's inside her dream home. What?
Yes. And you would have thought
that.
she would have used her powers.
Well, maybe because she freaked out and it was like so quick.
Maybe.
I mean, it wasn't fast, but like when you're panicking, like not all faculties are lighting up at the same time.
Right. Yeah, she definitely looked like Han Solo in Carbonite there for a brief second.
How weird obviously that's like rubber or something, but how weird did that have to be like pushing on it to film that? Like, I don't know, that would creep me out.
Yes.
Well, how is the gang going to save Susan? Will her house put up a fight? Does a malevolent spirit haunt the smart home device? Or is it AI gone rogue? Only time and more episodes will tell. Stay tuned for more SurrealEstate.
We would love to hear your thoughts on each and every episode this season. Our deadline for feedback is 10 p.m. Eastern every Friday during the season. You can send your feedback, be it email or audio, to contact us at fangirlzone.com. Please review and rate us on iTunes and any other podcast catcher you use for your podcast. With good ratings and reviews, it helps other fans of the show find us. And tell your friends, and we do hope you're enjoying our podcast.
You can find us at www.fangirlzone.com, and there's a contact page which will tell you everywhere else you can find us. Like Steve said, we are on basically every podcast catcher out there, many, many shows. But our contact page will tell you how to get a hold of each of us. You can get both of us together and contact us, or any of our other hosts. We're all listed there, plus all of the other places that you can find us, because we're everywhere, and we just talk about random stuff often. So, for this episode of SurrealEstate on Sci-Fi Talk,
I'm Steve. This cabin in the woods is creating more drama than $1 million property.
and I'm Shwan Fangirl S. And until next time.